Good afternoon? Yes, yes, still. All right, good afternoon. Couple of things. First, we're going to be, after you're done with me, we're going to be joined by two guests. The first being Stephen Rodriguez from the UN Development Program, who's the resident representative of UNDP in Afghanistan. He just left Afghanistan and I think landed in the UAE. He'll brief us from there, from Dubai. And we'll also be joined by Anatoly Balovnev, the UNDP Regional Area Manager in Afghanistan, who is briefing us from Jalalabad. They're obviously here to talk to you about the earthquake and the response. 2 p.m. there'll be a briefing, the first meeting of the Independent Scientific Panel on the Effects of Nuclear War, pursuant to the establishment of the panel this year. Our Secretary General is on his way back to New York from Papua New Guinea earlier today. He spoke to your colleagues in Port Moresby before leaving the country, telling them that he felt gratitude and solidarity for the role played by Papua New Guinea today, especially how it relates to its contribution to address climate change. Papua New Guinea does not contribute to climate change, he said, adding that the country has a negative emissions record due to its enormous carbon sink, and that is the world's third largest rainforest, as well as the ocean. The international community, which benefits from the country's forests and oceans, must pay back, the Secretary General said. First, the international community needs to accept that there must be climate justice. Countries like Papua New Guinea must have all the support that was promised it to address adaptation needs, to build resilience, and to protect people in country against the devastating impact of climate change, adding that there must also be justice in the way of international financial institutions address the problems of development. Mr. Guterres reiterated his call for reforms of the international financial systems. The Secretary General will be in New York at the crack of dawn tomorrow morning and be in the office on Monday. Travel to announce, though not the Secretary General, Maria Angela Holguin, who, as you know, is the personal envoy of the Secretary General, is set to travel to Cyprus next week. There she will meet the Greek Cypriot leader, Nikos Christoulidis, on September 12th, and the Turkish Cypriot leader, Ersin Tatar, on September 15th. She's also expected to engage with the representatives of the two leaders, among other Cypriot stakeholders. Moving to Gaza, and our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the ongoing offensive in Gaza City has further intensified today, increasing the damage to civilians and facilities on which they depend to survive. Earlier today, Israeli forces attacked a high-rise building that they say was used to execute attacks against them. Initial information collected by OCHA indicates that tents sheltering displaced people were damaged nearby. We're also concerned by the announcement that more high-rise buildings will be attacked soon. These developments are forcing increasing numbers of people to flee in a place where just about everyone has already been displaced, often many times, and where famine, as you know, has just been confirmed. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that in the north, people are simply just exhausted. They can't afford to move south, not only because displacement sites are overcrowded, but also because transport can cost up to $1,000. Between Wednesday and yesterday, our colleagues tracking population movements in Gaza recorded nearly 3,000 movements from the north to the south. That brings the total since October 14th to nearly 41,000. Meanwhile, OCHA also reports that in more parts of the Gaza Strip, Israeli authorities require any movement of humanitarian personnel to be coordinated with them in advance. On Wednesday and yesterday, our teams attempted to coordinate 29 such movements, but 19 of them were either denied outright or initially approved, but then significantly delayed or otherwise impeded on the ground. Only 9 of these movements were facilitated, and 1 had to be canceled by the organizers. Despite the impediments, we were able to collect some fuel and supplies related to water, hygiene, and sanitation from the Karim Abu Salam, Karim Shalom crossing, as well as Zikim, and transfer some other items within the Gaza Strip. Our teams were also able to repair a road in Rafah that's needed to improve the cargo flow in the south, as well, and as we mentioned yesterday, they were able to assess the conditions and needs of displaced people in the north which are vast. Yesterday, the World Health Organization distributed critical nutritional supplies to support hospitalized infants and patients who are at Al Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. These included 4,900 units of infants in high-protein formula and 2,000 feeding components. To respond to famine and malnutrition adequately, humanitarians working in Gaza continue to call for scaled-up, sustained, and safe access so that enough food and medicine can enter the Gaza Strip and reach those who need them. And we also need sustained and unimpeded access directly to the north, and that, of course, includes Gaza City. Turning to the West Bank, where OCHA paints a pretty dire picture, telling us that since January, more than 2,780 Palestinians have been injured by Israeli forces or settlers. That's a 39% increase compared to last year. This includes nearly 500 people injured by Israeli settlers. That's a twofold rise over the same time frame in 2024. As of Monday, OCHA has also documented the demolition of more than 1,150 structures across the West Bank this year for lacking Israeli-issued building permits, which are almost impossible for any Palestinian to obtain. That's a 44% increase compared to the same period in 2024. Turning to Afghanistan, our emergency relief coordinator, Tom Fletcher, said in a statement today that the devastating earthquake is the latest crisis to expose the cost of shrinking resources on vital humanitarian work. He noted that within hours of the earthquake, OCHA's pooled funds OCHA's pooled funds released $10 million to kickstart the response. The de facto authorities have quickly responded, and countries are generously providing relief supplies and critical funding items. But if this isn't enough, Mr. Fletcher warned, stressing that failing to rally resources now will mean deeper suffering and more lives lost. For its part, our colleagues at UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, dispatched $4.5 million worth of emergency relief items to Kunar and Jalalabad, including family tents, thermal blankets, and jerry cans, gas cookers, solar lamps, and tarpaulins to assist some 5,600 households. At the moment, though, UNHCR says its stock in Afghanistan is quite low, as the agency has been assisting Afghans returning or forced to return from neighboring countries, mostly Pakistan and Iran. Pending findings from their interagency assessment, UNHCR is assessing availability in its emergency stockpiles in the region, including in Uzbekistan, to meet further needs. You'll hear a lot more about Afghanistan in just a few minutes from our guests. Excuse me. I also want to flag one more horrific situation in Haiti, which we've been talking to you about quite a bit. I have a rather distressing note on the unimaginable situation that many women and girls live in, as gender-based atrocities in Haiti are reaching alarming levels. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that between January and July of this year, more than 6,200 incidents were reported by service providers. Nearly half of those were rapes, with 62% of those incidents allegedly perpetrated by armed gang members. Adult women are the most affected, but 1 in 7 survivors is a child, a girl under the age of 18. Furthermore, just over half the incidents involved internally displaced people, yet only a quarter of rape survivors were able to access medical care within the critical 72-hour window. Reasons for that vary between insecurity in the country, the stigma associated with gender-based violence, as well as a weak referral system and the lack of health facilities in many areas. In response, between January and July of this year, UN agencies and our humanitarian partners provided assistance as much as they could, such as medical care, psychosocial support, legal aid, dignity kits, and emergency shelter. However, services remain heavily concentrated in the capital Port-au-Prince and in the Artibonite department, where most of our partners are based, with other regions, including Centre and Grand Sud, receiving, unfortunately, very, limited support. To make things even more complicated, chronic underfunding combined with severe access constraints is leaving the vast majority of survivors without the care they need or the care they deserve. To give you an example of the funding gap, we need $19 million required for prevention and response to gender-based violence in Haiti. $19 million. I think you could buy a number of apartments for $19 million in New York. We've only received 18%, and that's just over $3 million. We can't stress enough that urgent support is needed to expand services to undeserved areas and protect women and girls across Haiti from these heinous crimes. Turning to Ukraine, our humanitarian coordinator there, Matthias Schmale, strongly condemned in a statement an attack in the Chernihiv region that killed and injured humanitarian workers. Yesterday's missile attack on a humanitarian demining site in Chernihiv region killed two and injured 8 deminers from the Danish Refugee Council. At the time of the attack, its teams were clearing landmines and explosive remnants of war in an area heavily contaminated since the start of the full-scale invasion by Russia into Ukraine. According to our partners, at least 4 other aid workers have been killed and 34 injured in Ukraine so far this year. Meanwhile, hostilities and attacks continue across the country, with several civilians killed and injured, according to authorities. The regions of Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson were the most impacted, with significant damage done to homes and civilian infrastructure. We, along with our partners, mobilized emergency assistance across affected regions. And turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where I can tell you we, along with our humanitarian partners, are supporting the government-led response following the declaration yesterday of a new Ebola outbreak in Kasai province in the country's center-west. As of September 4th, preliminary figures from national authorities indicate 28 suspected cases. That includes 15 fatalities, including 4 frontline health workers. The number of provisional and are provisional and are expected to change as surveillance activities are scaled up. The impacted areas, particularly Bulape and Weka health zones, previously experienced outbreaks in 2007, 2008, and 2011. A joint rapid response team supported by WHO experts has been deployed to Kasai province to strengthen disease surveillance and response capacity. WHO is delivering more than 2 metric tons of essential supplies, including personal protective equipment, mobile labs, and medical teams to support the immediate response. Also in the DRC, and also a bleak picture, our colleagues in the UN Human Rights Office published a report today showing that all parties to the conflict in the Congolese provinces of North and South Kivu have committed serious violations of international humanitarian law that may amount to war crimes and even crimes against humanity. The report produced by the UN Human Rights Office fact-finding mission said since late 2024, gross human rights violations have been committed by the M23, supported by the Rwandan Defense Forces, as well as the Congolese armed forces and affiliated armed groups. It documents the failure by all parties to adequately protect civilians in the conduct of hostilities, particularly during the takeover of Goma by the M23 and the RDF in late January, as well as attacks on schools and hospitals. The report further finds that both DRC and Rwanda bear responsibility for their support to armed groups with known track records of serious abuses. The report is online. Quick update for you from our colleagues at the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs on the impact of the severe flooding in northern India, for which you will recall the Secretary General had expressed his deep sorrow. The impacted, with Punjab state being one of the areas hardest hit. Dozens of people have been reportedly killed, nearly 1,900 villages, and more than 380,000 people said to be affected. Hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland have also been drowned. The government of India is leading the response effort, but our country team stands ready to assist. Food price index, first Friday of the month. Our friends in Rome at the FAO say that tell us the new report indicates that the benchmark of world food commodity prices remain largely unchanged in August. Increases in meat, sugar, and vegetable oil prices offset declines in cereal and dairy quotations. The FAO Food Price Index averaged 130.1 points in August, marginally up from the revised July level of 130 points, but 6.9% higher than a year earlier. International Days to Flag. Sunday will be the International Day of Clean Air and Blue Skies. Nearly every person on Earth breathes air that is unsafe and causes health problems. And in his message, the Secretary General calls on citizens of this planet to take all necessary steps for clean air and breathable air. And pegged to that, the World Meteorological Organization released a report today tracing the complex interplay between air quality and climate, highlighting the role of tiny particles called aerosols in wildfires, winter fog, shipping emissions, and urban pollution. The report notes that burning of fossil fuel and other human activities that contribute to climate change are also sourcing pollution like black carbon, nitrous oxide, and ground-level ozone, which in turn aggravates climate change. Air quality and climate change must not be addressed in isolation. They must be addressed hand in hand. Other international days. Today is the International Day of Charity. Be nice to me. Observed every 5th of September. The date was chosen to honor the anniversary of the death of Mother Teresa. It's a global reminder of the importance of compassion and generosity. And also Sunday is the International Day of Police Cooperation. The Secretary General reaffirms that if technology is used responsibly, it can strengthen the effectiveness, transparency, and accountability of police institutions around the world. And lastly, Sunday is also World Duchenne Awareness Day. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a rare progressive disorder where muscles become weaker over time. This year's theme is Family is the Heart of Care and highlights the role family members play in helping people who are living with this disorder. Money today, which means questions. 2 countries paid their regular budget dues. The first country's capital city is considered the second largest French-speaking city in the world after Paris. Who said Kinshasa? Good job, Lenka. So we thank our friends in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The second country is landlocked and is home to the world's largest artificial lake by volume. It's considered the world's largest artificial lake by volume of water it holds. All right, it's in Africa. No, the Gambia, no. No, I mean, a good try, but not. Sorry? Nope. Now, you're not, okay, we're going to sit here and listen to 54 countries being listed. It is Zimbabwe. Lake Kariba holds 185 cubic kilometers of water. So we thank our friends in Harare as well for paying their dues. I will pay my dues now. Deji.
You might already said this in the beginning. I missed that part. Yesterday, U.S. State Department listed 3 humanitarian groups of Palestine on the sanction list. I know that the human rights chief, Volker Turk, has already expressed his opinion, said it's unacceptable. What is the opinion from the Secretary General?
We support, obviously, Mr. Turk and his position, and I think it is quite concerning that we see the increased use of these types of sanctions against NGOs. Pam?
On the Haiti numbers, there was a report that came out just in February that there was 1,000% increase. What you're talking about is increase even since in the past.
Yeah, the numbers I think are pretty. This is just.
And any progress toward a multinational force or any kind of.
Well, I mean, the progress, what you know, is the multinational security support force is on the ground. What it needs is more support, and obviously we're moving following the adoption by the Security Council of the list.
And is there any identification of which gangs?
No, I think it is all gangs.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jordan?
Yes. Do you have any update on the communication between the UN and the host country on Palestinian visas?
No, as I mentioned earlier this week, we're in touch with the State Department to try to get some clarification and obviously, hopefully, a reverse of the decision based on their obligations under the host treaty agreement.
How many UN international staff in Gaza? And if you have number, can you compare the current number with the number was 2 years ago?
The number is less. We've reduced our footprint, but we remain very present in Gaza. I'll try to get you a number. The footprint is constantly being adjusted based on the operational needs, but also obviously taking into consideration the security of staff. I mean, yesterday we had our colleague Tess Ingram from UNICEF, who is an international, who's been in Gaza, and we've had quite a few international staff who remain in Gaza.
Allow me. It's a legal question, I think. I'm not sure if it's a legal question or not, but you mentioned something about settlers' violence in West Bank against Palestinians, and you gave very huge number of injured and death. Do the UN or does the United Nations consider the action, violent action by settlers, as a terror act or what?
Look, all of this violence, all of the settlers involved in attacks on Palestinian civilians need to be held to account by the Israeli authorities, right? Those are crimes, and they need to be held to account for committing those crimes. Alex, and then we'll come up here.
Thanks so much, Steph. I have a question on Yemen. There have been some reports that Yemeni Houthis are attempting to develop chemical weapons. Do you guys have any evidence of that?
I'm not able to answer that question now. It doesn't mean others in the UN are not, or may be able. I will check. We will check for you.
Thank you.
Yep, and then we'll go to Yvonne.
Minglu from China Daily. The General Assembly today is considering multiple resolutions regarding the UN cooperation with regional groups, such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Can you tell us what is the view of Secretary General about the value of the United Nations working with regional groups like the SCO?
The Secretary General, I think since the beginning of his tenure, has highlighted the need for increased cooperation between the United Nations and regional groups and sub-regional groups as a way of kind of what he refers to, I think, as layered multilateralism. Often regional groups are very effective in dealing with regional issues within the framework of the UN Charter and international law, and I think that has been his message, whether it is regarding Asia, Africa, Latin America, or Europe. Yvonne Murray.
Thank you, Steph. On his most recent trip to China this week, last week, the Secretary General said he told the Chinese leader, Chairman Xi Jinping, that the support of China is an extremely important element to preserve for the UN. So does that mean, does preserving China's support make it hard for the Secretary General and other UN officials to speak out on China's human rights record?
No, I think whether it's the Secretary General, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, other entities, the Secretary General has spoken out on what he sees as human rights violations in many countries.
Okay, and yesterday I asked you about specifically the Jimmy Lai case. Do you have any further comments?
I would refer.
On that?
I saw our colleagues in the Office for Human Rights, Mr. Turk's office, commented, and we fully back and support his comments.
So the Secretary General supports the comments made by Volker Turk?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Dennis, and then we'll go to Lenka. Sorry.
Thank you, Steph. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, there has been an exchange of letters between the Secretariat and the Russian mission to the UN on Bucha. So I have two questions on that.
Recent letters, or I mean, they've been exchanged in the past. I don't know if they're.
I believe in the past.
Okay.
So my first question is, how does the SG respond to the Russia's letter criticizing the UN's delayed and inadequate reply to the 2024 inquiry on the alleged Bucha staging?
Look, I think the issue of Bucha has come up often, notably in bilateral meetings between the Secretary General and Foreign Minister Lavrov. I think the Secretary General has answered and given our position, and I don't think it has changed in any way.
And sorry, the second one, will the Secretary General publish Russia's appeal as official documents in the General Assembly and Security Council as requested by the Russian Foreign Ministry?
Any member states that writes to the Secretary General asking for a document to be circulated, that document is circulated. Lenka.
Thank you. Any new phone calls on Ukraine?
None that I'm aware of, but if I become aware, I will let you know.
Thank you.
Ms. Salome.
Steph, I apologize. You may have touched on this earlier, so if I missed it, I'm sorry. But can you comment on the targeting of buildings in Gaza and the...
Yeah, I did. That was one of the first things I talked about.
Okay, all right. I'll check it. Thank you.
Yes, sir, please.
Given the U.S. visa restrictions, is there a possibility that the high-level week of the General Assembly be held somewhere outside of the United States?
I have not seen any credible movement on that.
Is there a process for this? For
well,
example?
I mean, the member states can decide to hold a meeting wherever they decide to hold it. That would be a decision of the General Assembly. But frankly, I have not seen any serious traction on that. All right, Jordan, and then we need to go to our guests who've been patiently waiting. Go ahead.
I have to follow up with him and on my first question, because you said in the beginning of the week you start communicating with the State Department on the visa issue.
Correct.
And did you have any answer? Did you is there a hope that they will allow at least the...
I think that's a question you need to ask the U.S. authorities.
No, but you communicating, you said you...
I understand. I understand.
But did you receive an answer?
I understand what you're saying. I'm saying I'm not going to communicate on whatever they may have told us. I think if you want to find out the latest U.S. position, you should speak to them. All right. I would ask you to stay for our guests. Are you... I just want to make sure Stephen is connected, or guest connected, and if they could be put up on the screen, please. Great. I will see you. I think who will Stephen? Will you go? Will you go first?
Yes, I will.
Great. Okay. So Stephen, please go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steph, and good afternoon to everyone. I will kick things off and give a general update on what is happening with respect to the earthquake. And then my colleague, who's the area manager in the eastern region of Afghanistan, Anatoly, who's also online, will give some of his first-hand experience of what is happening on the ground. Now, as everyone already knows, on August 31st at close to midnight, there was that 6.0 magnitude earthquake which struck the eastern provinces in Afghanistan, leaving a wake of destruction in mostly mountain communities across 3 provinces, Nangarhar, Kunar, and Laman. Since then, including this morning, there have been strong aftershocks which continue to rattle the region, further terrifying families, but also worsening road conditions and hindering rescue and relief operations. Unfortunately, and this I heard from my UNICEF and UNFPA colleagues, some of the relief workers got injured from yesterday's quake as well. The human toll is high, and I think, Steph, you reported on this. According to the latest assessments, more than 2,200 people have lost their lives, and nearly 3,700 have been injured. At least 6,700 homes have been destroyed, and we have seen entire villages built on steep hillsides have collapsed. And you'll hear a bit more about that from Anatoly, who has actually visited some of those communities. But beyond the loss of life, we have also seen basic infrastructure and livelihoods destroyed. As you know, OCHA has deployed 25 teams to do rapid assessments in the provinces and their districts. And their data is showing approximately 84,000 people affected by the earthquake. Schools, health facilities have collapsed. 68 major water sources have been destroyed, cutting off access to safe water for thousands of people. And FAO indicates that perhaps close to 1 million livestock have also been affected in some of those provinces, primarily Nangarhar and Kunar. And as usual, it's the poorest households that are living in fragile mud and stone dwellings that have suffered the most. Of course, the humanitarian partners are on the ground. Access remains difficult. And again, you will hear a bit more on that, those issues of access from Anatoly, who attempted to access some of those regions recently. Nonetheless, the emergency response is scaling up. Thousands of tents and non-food items are now arriving for distribution. Mobile health teams are treating the injured. More than 20,000 people have already received food assistance, and water trucking and sanitation facilities are being set up to prevent the outbreak of disease. You've also heard that the UN has mobilized an initial 10 million from pooled funds, and donors, including the UK, the Republic of Korea, and Australia, have contributed. Other regional neighbors, including India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and others, have provided in-kind support. But far more is needed. And you also know the immediate priorities: shelter, food, safe water, sanitation, emergency healthcare, and of course, psychosocial support. Children, women, and people with disabilities remain most at risk. And with winter approaching, because this is the very mountainous region which gets very cold, time is short for us to provide relief. Now, this tragedy, and this is one of the main points I want to convey, comes on top of multiple overlapping crises that Afghanistan has been experiencing. For example, communities in the East had already endured flash floods in August and major droughts earlier this year. Currently, 19 of the country's 34 provinces are facing the worst drought experienced in decades. And you know about the millions of Afghans who are being forcefully returned from Pakistan and Iran. In UNDP, our latest socioeconomic assessment of the country shows that 75% of the population, that's 3 out of every 4 Afghans, are struggling to survive at a subsistence level, meaning they can barely afford to meet their basic needs. As my senior economist here in Afghanistan put it when he was speaking to the New York Times recently, Afghanistan is facing a perfect economic storm. So the region that has been struck by the earthquake is also one of the main areas where returnees are resettling, and they're often in extremely poor housing conditions and with limited livelihood opportunities. Host communities, already under significant pressure, are now facing even greater challenges. And this is why our response must go beyond immediate relief. Humanitarian aid is crucial to save lives today, but recovery and building for resilience must also start now. We need to help those communities clear debris, rebuild homes with safer techniques, restore schools and clinics, but also revive local markets, local businesses, local agricultural activities, and create jobs. UNDP and all partners will be working with the affected communities on what we refer to as community-driven recovery. That means we'll be providing cash for work so families can earn an income while clearing rubble and rebuilding homes and infrastructure. We'll be supporting the safe reconstruction of homes and transitional shelters. We'll also be repairing water systems, roads, and other community facilities. We'll help small businesses and farmers to recover because we know that without livelihoods, there's absolutely no chance for resilience. We'll, as UNDP, will also focus on providing renewable energy for households and for public facilities such as health centers and schools. And in all our programs, we'll ensure that women, but also the returnees and vulnerable groups are fully included in the rebuilding effort. We've seen that in the past earthquakes, such as in Herat in 2023, this community-driven approach works. And with the right support, Afghan communities will show extraordinary resilience and solidarity. Anatoly told me of what he saw in one village with some of the young men walking over 13 hours over mountain passes to help neighbors in other districts and communities. So I want to leave you with two messages, dear colleagues. First is that the needs are urgent. Tens of thousands of families are living outside in makeshift shelters, and they're fearful of aftershocks. And with winter approaching fast, we need to act equally fast. The second key message is that we must seize this crisis as an opportunity to build back better, to reduce vulnerabilities, to restore hope, and strengthen stability. And this requires not just the short-term humanitarian assistance, but longer-term investments in resilience. But before I conclude, and I saw this in your press statement yesterday, Steph, and some of the questions that were raised, I want to address one of the questions that have come up in my interviews as well with the media, which relates to the restrictions on women and girls in Afghanistan. Yes, those restrictions exist. And yes, they have an impact on our work. They limit our ability to recruit female staff, which is essential to reach women and girls that are in need. And this also undermines the country's longer-term recovery because the country is excluding half of the population from education, from employment, from public life. So this will set back Afghanistan's development. And it's also a challenge to our humanitarian relief efforts. That said, I want to address directly the reports that in the context of the recent earthquake, women are being prevented from receiving emergency medical care. We have looked into this very carefully. What we're finding is that these appear to be isolated incidents, excesses committed by a few local actors, rather than a systematic restriction. For example, a trustworthy source at the Nangarhar Hospital confirmed that around 20 women were evacuated by helicopter from Kunar province and admitted for treatment. Similarly, I spoke with my WHO colleague earlier today, and he indicated that in the affected area, all critically injured patients, including women, were being transferred for health treatment without restriction, depending solely on the severity of their injuries. So while the restrictions on women remain a broad structural issue, in this specific earthquake response, we have not seen evidence of a systematic ban on women either participating in the relief efforts or receiving urgent medical care. The UN is, of course, monitoring closely, and we will continue to advocate strongly to ensure that women and girls have safe, equal, and unimpeded access to all humanitarian and medical services. So to conclude, the UN stands in solidarity with the Afghan people in this moment of grief. but international support is critical, and we will be launching an emergency appeal in the coming days. I think OCHA has indicated on the 8th of September, and we urge member states and partners to step forward quickly and generously. Now, let me ask Anatoly just to give 2 or 3 minutes of his first-hand experience from the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. Anatoly, please go ahead.
Thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Jalalabad. My name is Anatoly. I'm area manager of UNDP based here in the country. UNDP has very strong presence in the region. Our office is covering 4 provinces, Nuristan, Nangarhar, Lagman, and Kunar. And 3 of those provinces has been heavily hit by the recent earthquake. We have an excellent team here, and we already conducted several site visits, and I would like to share my first-hand experience about one of them. It was Sutan village in Darinur district of Nangarhar province. This place was already on our radar due to recent flash floods, and also that they have received many returnees. So we know the area very well. The village located in a very remote area, mountainous. It was very hard to reach. We have seen many evidence of the recent landslides, which were fortunately already removed by the locals. So we could access this area. Also, at the same time, I would like to highlight that this place is very typical victim of this earthquake. Other places are very similar to that. So Sutan village is the place with around 7,500 people living there. I met with locals. I was looking at the damage, and that was heartbreaking. In this particular small village, there was 12 casualties. Out of them, 8 were children, small children, and two victims were recent returnees from Pakistan. So those people have been suffered for many years. They went a long way, and now they received another disaster. Besides, we had around 60 people injured in this place, mainly because the buildings are constructed from mud, stone, and wood, as Stephen already mentioned, and those are easy to collapse. The more wealthier people use modern technologies, use concrete, and those buildings are still exist. They are not collapsing, and that's revealed the truth about earthquake. It hits mainly the most vulnerable people. I saw parents who are deeply grieving now. Many of them lost multiple children, unfortunately. Now, entire community is just living outside. They are afraid to come back. More than 300 shelters has been destroyed or damaged, and it's natural that people are afraid to coming back, and because they are afraid that earthquake will repeat again. And actually that happened yesterday when we had another very strong earthquake or aftershock, whatever you call it, and that caused additional damages, multiplying already delivered destruction. Now the number of, I received the call from this village, and I can say that the number of injured people raised to 82, and more than 400 houses are now destroyed. What else? The second source of people dying was not only because of collapsing walls and roofs, but also from rock side. Earthquake caused some shakes which which led to the landslides. And in one place, 13 years old boy was killed by a falling stone while he was still in bed, and his two siblings also has been severely injured. Now rescue operations are still ongoing. There is still many areas which are very hard to reach. People are going there by foot or by helicopter. But even in this very difficult time, Afghan communities are showing very strong resilience. They are very well organized on the local level. And that will make us possible to deliver area-based interventions directly to those communities and directly to those people who are suffering. And we're looking forward to start our early recovery operations and to help those people as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anatoly. We'll now take some questions. Deji?
Hi, this is Deji Shu with China Central Television. We know this is not the first time we have an earthquake in Afghanistan that caused massive death tolls in the country. I'm just wondering, is there a way to build resilience for the next time? Because it seems this is never going to end. Thank you.
Please, go ahead, either Stephen or Anatoly.
Let me start, because it's an excellent question. And this is why I mentioned that the building resilience is not a short-term project. What Anatoly said earlier, that the poorest are usually the most affected, whether it's by earthquakes or floods or any of these major disasters. The poorest are the ones who build houses close to riverbanks. And so when there are floods and flash floods, they're the ones who suffer. The poorest are the ones in Herat and here in these villages who have mud houses. The poorest are the ones who don't have assets. And so when there's an economic shock, when they lose their jobs, they have nothing to fall back on. Addressing that requires us to deal with those structural issues of poverty and unemployment in Afghanistan. And this is a context because Afghanistan is one of the very poorest countries in the world. Its GDP per capita is close to the very bottom of the list. The economy today is smaller than it was in 2011. When the Taliban took over and the government collapsed, the economy also collapsed by a staggering 27%. So poverty and unemployment are extremely high. And so the kinds of investments that are needed are investments in job creation, in revitalizing the economy, in providing communities and people with proper health care, with proper education, but also investments in basic social services, in people having access to water and energy. This is what works in every other society, including the developed societies of Western Europe or the US. It is the poorest who are always the one who suffer again and again when a crisis hits. And that's what resilience requires, building in that manner.
Thank you. Yeah, Amélie, and then go.
Thank you. Amélie Botelier from AFP News Agency. You mentioned the emergency appeal that will be launched in a few days, but I guess it's for emergency relief effort and humanitarian aid. But a follow-up to Deji's questions, rebuilding is something else. So do you have any kind of estimates of how much money would be needed and how long would it take to rebuild everything that's been destroyed, but in a better way for it to be more resistant to any future disaster? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It's a really great question. Two things. One, within the humanitarian country team here, We have said that we want any flash appeal that goes out to include both the immediate relief and humanitarian assistance component, as well as the recovery component as well. So we expect that flash appeal to include both components. But secondly, I wouldn't want to go ahead of OCHA because there's a coordinated effort being made. I mentioned there are 25 assessment teams on the ground currently that's looking at the needs based on the damages that have been that have occurred. The World Bank is also looking to do its own damage and loss assessment using its methodology. We're using satellite image from the area, and we'll pull all of that data together to address both the immediate humanitarian needs, but also the recovery needs for those communities. For UNDP, we estimate an initial 8 million for the kinds of work we would like to do, including rebuilding shelter, transitional and permanent houses for the communities, rebuilding some of the roads, providing energy, renewable energy for these households, etc. But that's just one small component of the broader picture. But we'll have a complete picture by the 8th of September is the projection from OCHA.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Jennifer Levine, Interpress Service. Given Afghanistan's political isolation and that many countries do not recognize the government, how is the UN working alongside the Taliban to effectively provide aid?
That's also an excellent question. And the simple answer to it is, when it comes to humanitarian natural disasters or man-made disasters, the humanitarian principles hold: humanity, impartiality, independence. And so we have made this case to the de facto authorities from the very beginning, whether it is dealing with the droughts or the Herat earthquakes or other disasters that have occurred, that these principles are fundamental. Now, the interesting thing is, I think they've learned some of these lessons from the past. We had some difficulties initially, for example, in Herat, getting access for some of our female staff to attend to females in some of these communities. But from what we've seen in this current disaster, they're working hand in hand with us, coordinating very closely. And by the way, these are very mountainous regions that are otherwise impassable. And so we can only get to some of these places using their helicopters and their assets, and they're making those available. But they're also allowing female aid workers to access the regions, usually, of course, with a mahram. And as I indicated earlier, they're also allowing females to be transported to hospitals and health facilities to receive treatment. So I can say it's been almost exemplary in this particular instance. And I guess there's been some growth in that relationship since over the last couple of years, and a full understanding that humanity comes first, tending to those most in need, irrespective of ethnicity, of gender, of anything else. We must provide assistance to those who are in need.
Thank you. We'll go online. Iftikhar?
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Steph. Sir, this is Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. With all the roads damaged in the impact area, how are you delivering aid to these survivors?
Anatoly, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, many roads still are locked. As I mentioned, they are very poor quality initially, even before the earthquake. They were unpaved, and there is no protection against landslides. Now, with the support of the de facto authorities who providing the heavy machineries, those landslides are being removed, and all humanitarian assistance now starting to reach those areas. I also know that they use helicopters to deliver some medicine, some essential medicine to the affected areas as well. And also, they deployed military forces to go there by foot and to deliver needed support in this way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you all. Stephen, Anatoly, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's very late there and you guys have a lot to do, but we hope to welcome you back soon. Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.